Are we in for a stormy spell on Friday night? How wet will it get before then? And could a tropical tango influence both of those things? There's an awful lot going on in this week's Met Office Deep Dive. Welcome along. My name's Alex Deakin. I'm a meteorologist here at Met Office HQ. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. If you could do us a big favour and hit that thumbs up button, give us a like, that would be brilliant. And if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, then you could do that as well. This week's deep dive is action-packed, got some sexy new graphics to show you as well. So there's plenty to pack in. I've had to make some notes. That's how extensive, that's how much I've got to pack into this deep dive. I've actually made some notes and got a bit of a running order, so I'll be referring to those as we go through. But yes, lots and lots to talk about. We'll start as always with a look at the satellite picture, because it's always a little bit mesmeric watching all these swirls and curls floating by. But we can pick out a few things from this. Notice the storm track, as it's known, where the low pressure system's all pushing up towards Iceland over recent days because the jet stream has been in this position. But also draw your attention to this little swirl. Doesn't look much here, but it's been crossing Spain, been providing some very heavy rain, and in particular over the past 24 hours, if we just pause it there and zoom in, not to the UK for the time being, but across the eastern parts of Spain, we've had some very heavy rain in here, and you can just see the thunderstorms blossoming as we've been through Monday. Individual cells there. Circulation from the remnants, actually, of Gabrielle, that old tropical cyclone that we've been talking about for a couple of weeks. The remnants of it crossed Iberia, and it dropped 200 millimetres of rain in and around Valencia during yesterday. And there's a red warning in place, I think, for Ibiza for today for further thunderstorms. But that is now easing. It is all kind of clearing away. But you can just see those individual storm cells blossoming there across the Balearics. So we've seen some torrential rain in this part of the world. But let's zoom out a little bit. Concentrate on what's going on across the UK. Because as I said, if we go through the last few days, you can see that everything's been pushing way up to the north. These low pressure systems have been developing and angling more away from the United Kingdom. And as I say, the reason for that, if we put the jet stream on, you can see the pattern of it. It's all pushing the low pressure systems up this way. It's allowed high pressure to sit in across the UK, certainly dominating across the southern half of the country. So the start of the week's been calm. It's autumn now, so this time of year, now that the nights are longer than the days, the nights are long enough for things to turn chilly, and temperatures have been dropping where we've had clear skies. And of course, no isobars across the southern half of the UK, so the winds have been light, which at this time of year, particularly after a wet first half of September and the ground's moistened up a little bit, has led to some foggy conditions in the mornings too. Certainly here in Exeter, we've had a couple of foggy mornings. There's been some dense patches elsewhere. Meanwhile, further north, close to the jet stream, close to the low pressure, close to the weather fronts, it has been a little cloudier. And that is going to continue over the next couple of days. The jet stream remaining active. And if anything, if we just jump from current time of recording straight forward to Saturday, look at the change. Look at how the jet stream has got really angry now across the UK, and it's dived much further south, and it's helped to spin up this deep area of low pressure. More on that in a moment, because that is the big feature that's going to cause us a few issues, be the big talking point over the next few days. But just wanted to show you that switch in the jet stream. And as it does so, if we go back, as we play through, and notice how the jet just gradually intensifies out across the Atlantic and starts to shift its way further south. We're seeing more of these weather fronts just drifting in, being pushed along on it, and they are sitting across western Scotland in particular over the next few days, and that's going to bring some heavy bursts of rain here. And then this one in particular, and that interaction with the jet there, that little dip is there, that little trough actually spins up a low pressure system that pushes its way up towards western Scotland as we go through Thursday and Thursday evening especially, and that low forms in there, going to generate some pretty heavy rain over the next few days. So we'll see those weather fronts building the rain up, and then this low in particular bringing a heavier spell of rain during the course of Thursday night and into Friday. So that is our first point. So I did say that, yes, that deep low on Saturday we need to keep a close eye on that. But before we get there, we do have to watch this low coming in because the rainfall really building up across western Scotland. Let's take a look at the maps and see what they're showing for the next few days. So this is the broader outlook. As say, time of recording, generally a fine day for many, and temperatures up into the high teens. The wind's pretty light across England and Wales. Stronger winds further north. And then if we fast forward to Wednesday, you can see that first waving weather front coming in, so we're going to see some wet weather setting in across western Scotland, and then it lasts through Thursday too. So that rain just then gets heavy as that next weather system, as that little trough develops this area of low pressure here, and the rain really peps up as we go through Thursday. The wind's also notably picking up there. Those isobars squidging together, so the wind's picking up, especially around Irish Sea coasts. Still quite mild across the east and the south, still generally a lot of fine weather. So a real southeast-northwest split for the next few days, with much of the south and east dry, fine, quite pleasant. Coolish mornings, bit of fog around. One side of autumn, if you like, and then the other side of autumn with the wet and windy weather coming in, particularly so to western parts of Scotland. By the time we get to Friday, we will eventually see some of that rain, or Thursday night really, moving in, and we will finally start to see some rain on Thursday night further south and east. But over the next day or so, we do need to keep our eye on those rainfall totals. Let's have a look at what they look like. And let's just play through and build up the rainfall accumulations. Nothing particularly heavy today, but then it does start to pep up. The rain will really start to build up as we go through Wednesday evening and into the early hours of Thursday morning. So you can see here, not much rain across the southeast, lots of rain across, some for Northern Ireland, particularly so in the west, but particularly this western side of Scotland as the winds pick up, pushing the clouds up the hills, and that generates more rainfall. Orographic rainfall, we call it, as the winds pick up, that rain will be increased. So the hills and mountains of western Scotland really seeing quite a bit of rainfall by this stage. So this is the total over the next day or so. Those yellow colours, 100 millimetres suggested. The oranges, hints of orange there, 150 millimetres, and even one or two spots of red where we could see 200 millimetres. That'll be over the tops of the hills, but of course, once it's fallen over the hills, it's all got to come down and into the system. Now, this is a particularly resilient part of the world. We see quite a bit of rainfall in western Scotland, but these kind of amounts building up over just that constant nature, building up over 36 hours, could cause a few problems. And you can see that even as we go through into Friday, we don't see the totals building up as much because we do get a bit of a respite. But certainly through Wednesday and Thursday, those totals building up. And notice also Dumfries and Galloway, also the model runs yesterday, the computer model runs weren't generating as much rainfall here, but now right across from Dumfries and Galloway up to the Western Isles, those totals up to 50 millimetres quite widely. I say a few spots giving 100 millimetres, and some places could see a little bit more than that. So we're a little bit concerned about the rainfall here, which is why we've got a Met Office yellow warning in place. There is the potential for some disruption as that rain sets in through Wednesday, lasts for most of Thursday. The warning is invalid, in fact, until the 6 o'clock on Friday morning. For those totals really building up, potential to cause some flooding, certainly some travel disruption. So if you are travelling in parts of western Scotland during Thursday especially, there could well be delays to public transport, and there may be some flooding issues also. So do keep up to date with the forecast and bear that in mind. Meanwhile, say across the rest of the UK, the weather's pretty calm, pretty fine. Say mist and fog likely to be a bit of an issue, but then some fine weather and some pretty pleasant autumn sunshine with the temperatures around or a little bit above average. Now, the exact details of that rain coming in, as I said, we've seen model runs oscillate a little bit, how much rain we see across western Scotland. That is all tied into the bigger picture, which, well, let's run through that now, because if we fast forward to Thursday, and this low that's coming in here, that's the one that will bring the rain on Thursday night. But if we zoom right out, we can actually see that one of the catalysts, or one of the factors affecting that rainfall on Thursday, is actually way down here in the tropics. I'd like to introduce you to Umberto and Imelda. These are tropical weather systems. Let's put the temperatures on, or the the air mass temperatures, you only can see very tropical air down here. That's Florida, and these two are tropical weather systems. Imelda at that time of recording, tropical cyclone, and Umberto. I've got to get the pronunciation right because I've been calling it Humberto, and that's wrong. It's Umberto. Was a Category 5 hurricane at the weekend. And it's almost 100 years since we've had back-to-back seasons of hurricanes with 2 Category 5s. That was the second Category 5 of this season. We had 2 Category 5s last season. The previous time, the only time recorded when we've had back-to-back Category 5s was 1932. So yeah, quite rare to have back-to-back Category 5 storms. It has weakened since, no longer a Category 5, but it is still a tropical system. And they're both kind of gradually interacting with each other, as we'll see in a minute, and pushing further northwards. And that, in effect, is also going to then impact the jet stream. Now, at the moment, they're kind of down to the south. The jet stream's up here. I'll take the temperatures off because that's a bit misleading. They're not really interacting with the jet stream at the moment, and the tropical systems tend not to. But as they drift northwards, Umberto will stop being a hurricane. It will undergo what's called extratropical transition. We've covered that before on the deep dive. It will just become a kind of standard area of low pressure. But when it does that, it also kind of interacts with the jet stream. Now, normally we talk about jet streams influencing low pressures and moving them around. But when you've got a tropical system, particularly with a lot of energy, then the opposite can be true, or they both kind of feed off each other, and they both can impact things. So these tropical systems, as they move closer to the jet, they can impact the jet stream. And what's likely to happen in the first instance, that jet pushes a little, as Umberto pushes further north, it develops a bit of a kink in the jet stream, and that influences downstream the shape of the jet and how it picks up this next low that's ahead of it. This is the one that's bringing Western Scotland and rain during Wednesday night into Friday. So how Umberto affects the jet stream will have downstream consequences and the effect on this area of low pressure as it approaches the UK. So some tropical influences even before we get to the weekend on this system as it approaches, because if it interacts a little bit more, you could see a bit more of a ripple. That would create more of a dip here, more of a trough, and that could spin up this low into being a little bit stronger. And just those subtle shifts will move the rainfall pattern just by 50 miles or so, but that could have a big impact about where we see the heaviest rainfall across Scotland as we go through the next 48 hours or to 72 hours. So the tropical system's already likely to influence things in the medium to short term. But obviously these tropical systems are then going to have a big impact on our weather as we head into the weekend too. Now, at the moment, so those two systems are kind of milling around. That's Imelda and that's Umberto. Really quite close together, these two weather systems. You don't often see these two systems as close as this. And in fact, I've got a little graphic to show you, courtesy of our tropical cyclone expert, Julian Hemming, and he spotted this from Michael Lowry, who's done all the analysis on this via social media, Michael R. Lowry. And he's put together this list of the closest Atlantic storms in the past, 50, almost 60 years. And you can see that Umberto and Imelda, at just less than 600 miles, come into the top, what is that, 10? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, the top 10. In at number 10, top of the list, Iris and Karen at under 300 miles they got within each other. So really quite rare to have two systems kind of milling around each other. And when they do get close to each other, they tend to interact. Now I've got a nice little picture here to show you. Not that one. This is what Iris and Karen looked like back in, what was it, 95, I think it was? Let me just check that. Yeah, back in 95. Iris actually interacted also with another Umberto, I think, at the time. But this is Iris and Karen, satellite picture from 1995, and those two storm systems interacting. You can see that there, the pattern almost of them interlinking. I haven't got a video, unfortunately, but it's a beautiful little satellite image those clouds being entrained into one another. And these tropical cyclones, when they get close enough, within about 800 miles, they can have 850 miles, I think, is the kind of threshold that they classify for these tropical cyclones to interact with each other. And actually, they can start rotating around each other. Something called the Fujiwara effect, discovered by a Japanese meteorologist back in 1921. That was when he named it after himself, the Fujiwara effect, where tropical cyclones, or indeed any cyclone, anything that's rotating, can start to rotate and dance around the other one. They don't kind of move as you'd expect them to move. If they were just on their own, it's not the normal shifting patterns of what's going on in the atmosphere that move them. They will interact each other and start to dance around a central point. I've got a little video of this happening here. Now this is from Saroja and Odette. These two tropical systems, this is from 2021, and Saroja actually was quite a powerful storm, one of the most deadly that hit Australia. So these two storms, you can see them as they kind of moving around each other here, the two circulations. So there's a central point and they can dance around each other. If one is much bigger than the other, it tends to draw out and kind of subsume the other one gradually. If they're of a similar size, they can eventually kind of collapse on each other and morph into one storm as well. But what normally happens is that one dominates and gradually sucks energy, or sucks the energy from another one. So that's just an example there of the Fujiwara effect from two tropical cyclones back in 2021. What's happening with our two systems? So this is the satellite picture from this morning of Umberto and Imelda. And you can see actually that Umberto, the bigger storm, the more powerful storm, it's a hurricane at this stage. This is just a tropical cyclone. But actually, some of the outflow you can see there. So tropical systems generate their energy from the sea, from the warm sea. There's a lot of rising air, but out of the top, that air's got to go somewhere. So they tend to spew out lines of cloud or cirrus, and you can see that there. But you can also see some of it feeding in here to Umberto as well, from Imelda into Umberto, and perhaps influencing it and weakening it a little bit as some of the upper air, some of the cooler air then drifts into it, and that obviously reduces the energy because it's been through the system. So it's lost its energy, it's lost its moisture as well. So cool, dry air then feeding into another system will kind of kill it off a little bit. Now, these two aren't expected to dance quite beautifully in a fantastic tango like those two we saw earlier in a classic Fujiwara, but they're definitely already interacting with each other because we don't see tropical systems this close to each other. Obviously, when that happens, the computer models can struggle a little bit to identify exactly what's going to happen. So that just adds a little bit of extra uncertainty as well, because they don't see this as often. It's quite a complex interaction. So this will be a really fascinating study, I imagine, in a few months' time for meteorologists around the world to see what actually does happen and those closely monitor those interactions. But in real time this morning, that is how that system is, or those systems are. And gradually, they're both going to track their way northwards. That's Bermuda in there. They're both just going to steer away from Bermuda, but particularly Imelda could get close enough to bring some heavy rain and even some strong winds to Bermuda over the next day or so. But they're both going to track northwards, and they're both going to head out away from the warm seas, so they'll lose their energy a little bit, and then they're going to interact with the jet stream, and they'll both go through post-tropical transition. Extratropical transition, and they'll stop being tropical systems, but they could still impact our weather, kind of. Let's have a look at what we're expecting to see from these two systems and how we go through this. So this is where we are at the moment. I say they're both kind of interacting with each other a little bit. Imelda is expected to intensify and become a hurricane before drifting northwards, and instead of kind of rotating around each other, they kind of just, Umberto kind of just looks like it pulls Imelda along a little bit. So they do kind of oscillate a little bit, but they're not really, they're not classically spinning around each other like we saw in that. Let's put that over there. I know the time bar, we are working on getting the time bar to move up there. People keep suggesting that, and it's a very good idea, and we are working on that, because I know it's quite annoying when the presenter's kind of leaning across. But there you go. They're not really spinning around each other. They're just kind of getting pulled across and drift further northwards. Let's put the air on as well, because it's still the tropical air in here. But what actually happens, ahead of Umberto, another little low is formed in here. At this stage, Umberto's stopped being a hurricane, now just a kind of post-tropical system. Imelda taking a while to do the same, but will do it by the end of Thursday. But then it's this little system in here that forms as Umberto gives rise to another area of low pressure, and that then tracks its way northwards. And this little weakness ahead of Umberto and how it interacts with the jet stream, well, that will dictate the weather that we see over the weekend, and it could be pretty lively, to say the least. So this is Thursday evening, going into Friday. Initially, let's get back to here. Initially, as this low forms, it's kind of in what we call a right entrance. So there's a jet streak here. So the jet, now let's take the temperatures off again. The jet, whoa, steady. This is the jet here, high up in the atmosphere. And we have, when we've got these little kind of sections of the jet, we have what's called a right entrance to the jet, a left entrance. And the right entrance and the left exit are where we see systems developing. We've talked about this again before on the deep dive. And this little system is just in this right entrance section, which allows it to spin up and form into a low. But the crucial part of the development happens as it crosses the jet through Thursday evening and into Friday. And then it gets into this section here, because now, notice those darker purple colours on the jet stream. The jet's intensified, so it's a stronger jet. As we get to this left exit portion of this jet, that low is really going to pop. It's going to really intensify. I haven't actually checked the numbers on it, but it's going to really intensify in terms of how quickly it deepens. We'll look at that over the next day or so, no doubt, because that is going to be a really interesting feature to see how quickly it develops as it crosses the jet. Now, you've got a lot of complex interactions with the tropical systems and with the jet and everything before that. This is still 3 days away. But how it interacts and how it crosses that strengthening jet will determine where this low goes. And that is really important because, as you can probably tell, but particularly so if I take the jet off, it's a bit of a powerful low. It's an intense area of low pressure. There's a lot of isobars on it. Just rewind it, see how it goes from here. Friday at 3 o'clock in the morning, pop, pop, pop. The isobars just start jumping out of it because it's really intensifying. Way more isobars on it, and just as it gets to the UK and the Republic of Ireland. So that means we're going to see some strong winds. So at this stage, it's not that deep. It's not that big a deal in terms of its area of low pressure, but just in those 24 hours, less than 24 hours, it has developed into a pretty serious area of low pressure with some strong and gusty winds, courtesy of those tightly packed isobars. So we know it's going to pack a punch, this area of low pressure, but we also know that a lot has got to happen beforehand for it to get to this stage. So that develops, that creates uncertainty. Now, this is what our model is suggesting will happen with the area of low pressure from when we just run the main computer model run once. But if you watch a lot of our output, if you watch the deep dives and our 10-day trends, you'll know that that's not necessarily the best way to look at these kind of systems. So what we do is an ensemble forecast where we just shake the initial conditions a little bit, and that gives us a projection of a number of outcomes. An ensemble forecast where we've got a whole range of different possible solutions to look at, and that gives us a better probability of certain scenarios happening. So this is the Met Office raw, the deterministic computer model run. But what I'm going to show you now are some funky new graphics, courtesy of Mr. McGivern. He's been working hard on these for many months. He's kind of the go-to graphics guy. He's been working on these graphics. I showed a kind of an example of them yesterday during the week ahead. But this now, if you get to the right time frame, is the ensemble forecast from the European model when it's run 50 times. So you get the main model run and you shake it up a little bit and you tweak a temperature here, you tweak a pressure reading here, and you get 50 different scenarios. And we can show them here now. So these are the different, each number here represents a different potential forecast. I've moved it to the time frame we're really interested in, which is overnight Friday into Saturday, so 3 o'clock on Saturday morning. And each of these ones now is showing each of those different ensemble runs. We used to show you the postage stamps, and they were really quite small. This is basically just showing you that in bigger form. And just to give you a few examples here. So that's a pretty deep area of low pressure there. We can zoom in a little bit. That's crossing through central parts of Scotland. The strongest winds with these lows are always going to be kind of in this southwestern quadrant. That's where the isobars are tightest together, so that's where the strongest winds can be. If we look at number 7, that's got the low a little further south, but not as deep. 13, and lucky for some, has got another one further south across northern England with some of the strongest winds here, but that is a bit of an outlier, as we will see. Many more of them have the low up away to the northwest of the, well, not many more of them, but some of them have the low pressure up here. Most of them kind of in this scenario where the low is kind of skirting through some parts of Scotland. Let me show you that by putting this on, which is the track of the lows. What I'll do, actually, I'll just zoom out a little bit. So instead of just looking at one, this now is showing the track of all 50 of those, and that's really quite useful. It's giving you this code. This is from the ECMWF Ensemble, and it's showing that, yeah, there are 1 or 2 that just take the low pressure up across towards Iceland, a few that have it between the UK and Iceland, but there are quite a significant chunk of them sending it down across Scotland, and as we saw, 1 or 2 of them a little bit further south with the centre of the low, taking it more into perhaps southern Scotland or maybe even northern England and across Northern Ireland. So we know that a pretty potent area of low pressure is going to be heading in somewhere in this zone, but as you'd expect at this kind of time frame, almost 4 days away, there's a bit of scope on its exact track, and that will have an impact also on the strength of the wind. Another way of looking at that is with the Dalmatian plot. Again, this is data from ECMWF. Each of these little dots in here, let me just yeah, the UK is in here, basically. So that's the UK in there, in case you can't see very well, but I'll take that off. Each of these little dots represents a different central position for the low, and the colour represents the intensity. Now, I'll just zoom in a little bit on that, because to be able to help you see a little bit better on that, hopefully we can play through that. There we go, there's a zoom. So there's the UK in here, that's southern England. Now, these peachy dots are further south, and the red and the darker bright pink colours. Now they're the more intense ones. So generally speaking, the deeper the lows are veering more up to the northwest of the UK, and the less intense ones, but it's only a matter of a few millibars, are generally speaking a little bit further south, and we often find that due to the dynamics of the low pressure system. But that's the cluster of where that low pressure could go, and say the intensity will determine the strength of the wind. We are likely to see some pretty strong gusts with this low pressure system, depending on exactly where it goes. Let's take a look at some of the wind gusts from this system. Now, this is based on the Met Office model, so we're not on the ensembles now. We're just looking at the Met Office model, and it's showing the winds picking up actually on that first system. Notice some pretty strong gusts up there through the Irish Channel, so we need to keep an eye on that for the Thursday weather system as it comes up. Some quite strong gusts, but the strongest gusts then really come in around the low in here. This is out to sea, but gusts in the 90s of miles an hour out to sea. And across land, you know, we could easily see those gusts quite a bit higher. What's that, in the 60, 70, 80 mile an hour bracket, if this were the track of the low. But as we've seen, there is quite a bit of uncertainty about the exact track of the low, but that's just to give you the potential for the winds that we could see from this system. It is going to pack a punch. It could be further south and a bit less intense, but that would mean the winds would be a little bit more widespread and potentially, you know, give more people problems from those winds. Let's look at the scenario. So let's kind of summarize all of that we've looked at there with those potential different scenarios. This is the most likely one. This is where most of the ensemble tracks take it somewhere across Scotland to the north with its strongest winds on its southern flank, and this pink zone being where we're most likely to see potentially damaging gusts of wind. In this kind of scenario, there'd still be some very strong gusts across Northern Ireland, Northern England, North Wales, maybe down to the Wash. And in this kind of scenario, where you've got the low tracking over the Northern Isles, the Northern Isles may not see some of the strongest winds. The strongest winds likely in that southwestern quadrant. So that's the most likely scenario at this stage. The other scenario that has, as we saw with like number 13 and number 7, was it, that has the low further south. So the low then tracks its way more across southern Scotland, and its intensity brings the strongest winds on its southwestern quadrant, so that could see potentially the more damaging gusts further south, so across parts of northern England, through Wales, and across Northern Ireland also. But it also increases the chances of stronger winds further south too. That is not the most likely scenario, but it is a potential scenario for the system Friday night and into Saturday. But as we also saw, there is that possibility, least likely scenario, but it could drift away to the north. That would just bring a spell of pretty strong winds to, well, the north of the Great Glen and in this zone. Quite a robust area. They see, regularly see gales, but still it would need to be watched, because remember, if the low is that further north, it has a greater chance of being deeper and packing more of a punch with some stronger winds. So they're the kind of 3 scenarios that we're looking at. Obviously, I didn't mention the rainfall, but wherever that low is going in, closest to the low, that's where we're going to see some of the heaviest rainfall. In this scenario, although the low tracks across northern Scotland, that could give you you get the rain on its front and its back edge of it, so northern Scotland could see the heaviest rain with this system. And don't forget, this is following on from Thursday's system, which is going to drop a lot of rain already across parts of western Scotland. So, the rainfall, even though this low is likely to move through quite quickly, any extra rainfall, depending on how much we see on Thursday, could cause some further impact. So in this scenario, the wettest weather would be across northern Scotland, and in that slightly less likely scenario, but still possible, we'd see fairly widespread heavy rain across most areas during Friday night and into Saturday morning. So they're the kind of main 3 scenarios that we're looking at. As I say, this is the most likely one, but it's far from set in stone. And there's always going to be some degree of variance, and the reason for that, as we've already seen, a lot of interactions have got to take place. Those tropical systems interacting themselves just off the east coast of the United States, then how they move northwards and interact with the jet stream and spawn this area of low pressure for this potentially stormy spell heading our way Friday night and into Saturday. Right, I think I've covered everything. Let me just check my notes. Oh, the other thing I was going to mention, this system does have the potential to be very deep indeed, and as it develops, could develop into quite a nasty one that could really pack a punch with its winds gusting in behind it. And there is the possibility, there's a few indications we could see something called a sting jet tied into that, just a possibility at this stage, something we'll have to analyse afterwards. And it's also likely to pack in quite a bit of rainfall as it crosses. How am I going to show that? What did I want to show for that? The rainfall as it comes in, not that one, I think. Yeah, there we go. Notice that line of heavy rain in there as it comes through. That is a sign of what we call line convection. So on the front as it moves through, you see a really narrow but very intense band of rain. The rain suddenly whips up. You get some really gusty winds as well. So hinting that as that system moves through, it could have some line convection on it. Now don't take that map literally in terms of where it's going to be, because as we've seen, there's a lot of variability in the position of the low, but that is just signaling quite strongly that this low may well have some line convection as the fronts move through. So that could be an extra hazard as well. Line convection is, say, where the winds suddenly gust up and you see some torrential rain in a short space of time. We've got an explainer on line convection. I think we'll try and put that in the description and in the chat. Speaking of the chat, please put your comments in there. We do love reading them. Any questions you've got around the system, we'll obviously be giving you updates throughout the week, and we'll be looking at it quite a bit on Fridays live, no doubt, which is with myself and Mr. McGivern. Speaking of the great man, Mr. McGivern, special shout out again for those graphics. If you like those graphics, the scenario graphics with the different tracks on, then please put a comment about that in the chat as well. So he's been working very hard on those. He will have more, and probably even more fun and games with these graphics in the 10-day trend tomorrow. So make sure you catch that. And the obvious way to not miss that, of course, is to subscribe to our YouTube channel. So while you're there, do give us a like as well as subscribing also. So yes, thank you very much for watching. I think that's pretty much it. Don't forget the live on Friday. Do subscribe. Do give us a like. One more thing, I've got a shout out. A chap stopped me in the street the other day, and he was called Jack, and he was very complimentary about all the things we do with the deep dive and the 10-day trend. So thank you for that, Jack. Very strong handshake you had there, Jack. So thank you for that. Thank you for watching. Thank everyone for watching. And do share the love. If you know another Met head, let them know that we do this every Tuesday. And if they haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, that they are missing out. But thank you very much. And yeah, I'll see you again soon.